Guten Nachmittag, meine Damen und Herren. Schön, dass ihr alle dabei seid und herzlich willkommen zum Community Call, wo es heute über die zeitgemäße Prüfungskultur in Skandinavien geht. Ich freue mich riesig, dass ihr alle dabei seid und wie das immer ist, hier in den Community Calls sind wir per Du. Ich hoffe, es ist in Ordnung. Ich schalte uns jetzt gerade hier ein bisschen größer mit den Bildern, sodass ihr auch sehen könnt, dass ich hier 3 Gäste zu Besuch habe heute und das wird ein ganz, ganz spannendes Gespräch. Ich habe versprochen, dass ich hier am Anfang in Deutsch anfangen darf und dann werden wir nachher in Schwedisch, in Dänisch oder, ja okay, dann gemeinsam auf Englisch machen wir weiter, weil wir haben Gäste aus Skandinavien. Hier vom Forum waren wir vorletzte Woche in Dänemark auf eine Bildungsreise mit der KMK und mit unseren Stiftungen. Und da haben wir viele spannende Impulse und Ideen mitgenommen. Wir haben neue Gäste kennengelernt und das ist auch total spannend. Da mache ich die kurze Überleitung. Wenn man Interesse hat, mehr über die Reise zu lernen, kommt unser Fachmagazin Plan BD mit einer neuen Ausgabe Around the World. Am 7.10. Man kann aber jetzt schon ein bisschen auf der Webseite des Forums lesen, wenn man auch ein bisschen über die Bildungsreise mitverfolgen möchte. Auf der Konferenz, was wir ja auch hier vom Forum organisieren, am 10., 11. und 12. November werden wir auch viel mehr über die Ergebnisse und Impulse der Reise erzählen. Aber heute widmen wir uns das 3. Mal hier in den Community Calls das Thema Prüfungsformate. Und das ist ganz spannend. Wir hatten es schon 2-mal, deswegen ist der junge Mann neben mir hier auf der obersten Reihe ja sicher auch ein bekanntes Gesicht hier in der Reihe. Weil es ist ganz wichtig, wir sagen ja eigentlich don't teach for the test, aber wir tun es aber trotzdem. Wenn wir uns aber im Unterricht weiterentwickeln und mit den 4Ks arbeiten und 21st Century Skills, da werden wir auch mehr hören, später dazu, sollten wir natürlich auch die Leistungsbewertung und Leistungsüberprüfung im Blick nehmen. Und wie gesagt, es gibt viele gute Ansätze hier in Deutschland. Björn und sein Institut ist einer davon, der auch versuchen, dieses Wissen in die Breite zu tragen. Aber wir müssen ja nicht immer das Rad neu erfinden, weil viele Länder haben schon Erfahrungen damit gemacht und davon können wir lernen. Also, willkommen zum Community Call und heute reisen wir gemeinsam nach Skandinavien. And now I will change into English, at least for a few seconds, because I would like to introduce 2 of the 3 guests. Björn, I've already said a little bit about you. I'll come back to you. But we have 2 guests with us today. First of all, we have Eva. Good to have you there. Welcome.
Thank you.
Eva is teacher in Denmark, in Esbjerg on Aura-skolen, and she's a teacher for the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And if we travel a little bit more north to almost to Stockholm, to Nacka, we have Emma Linde Hagefelt. Welcome to you as well, Emma. And Emma is a teacher for Spanish and sports. And then I have to read here on the Noppla-skolen, Salsjöbad in Nacka, in the near in close to Stockholm. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Perfect. And Björn, you are, oh ja, das muss ich aber auf Deutsch sagen, das kann ich jetzt nicht sofort übersetzen, Referent bei der Schulaufsicht der Evangelischen Schulstiftung in der EGPO. Also schön, dass du auch dabei bist. Und jetzt, bevor es weitergeht, ihr kennt ja fast den Drill, wir sind super gefreut, rauszufinden, wer eigentlich auch alle bei uns heute dabei sind. Deswegen also kurz die erste Frage, wer sind eigentlich alle dabei? Was macht ihr beruflich? Und jetzt wird es spannend zu sehen, was passiert. Unsere 2 Gäste haben vorher gefragt, wer sind eigentlich alle dabei? Was sind das für Leute? Was machen sie hier? Und jetzt wird es ganz spannend zu sehen. Das ist eine sehr, sehr spannende Entwicklung. Ja, ich sehe, ich kriege jetzt 70, 40, ja, das kommen noch ein paar Antworten dazu. Wow, das ist wirklich echt spannend. Wir haben 64 Teilnehmende. Es fehlen noch ein paar Leute, die noch nicht abgestimmt haben. So. You asked this question before, Eva and Emma. We have 41% teachers. We have 15% principals. We have some IT administrations. We have some in the municipalities. We have some from the states or country here. And we have also a lot of people from the NGOs here in Germany and also some from the universities. Very interesting. And We have another question. Is it the first time that you are coming to a community call or have you been there before? That's also quite interesting for me to know. Also seid ihr das erste Mal dabei oder kennt ihr schon das Format ganz gut? Ich habe, glaube ich, vergessen, am Anfang zu sagen, mein Name ist Jakob Schammern, ich bin Vorstand hier im Forum Bildung Digitalisierung und wir freuen uns, diesen Outreach machen zu können und jetzt auch zu sehen, das ist auch sehr spannend, wir haben 35%, die das Forum und uns gut kennen, die schon mal da war und 64%, die das erste Mal dabei seid. Also herzlich willkommen zum Community Call, herzlich willkommen zum Forum Bildung Digitalisierung. Es sollte ja ein bisschen skandinavisch sein heute, deswegen frage ich auch gerade hier, ob wir viele Leute im Raum haben, jetzt muss ich nämlich aufpassen, die eine skandinavische Sprache spricht oder versteht. I'm asking now Emma and Eva if some of our participants speak or understand the Scandinavian language, because we need to know that if we start speak our secret languages here, it's quite good to know. Or someone is writing in the chat. Oh, we have people writing Swedish or Norway, Danish, allerdings Finnish. Naja, Finnish is ja not in our world Scandinavian, but here in Germany, it's quite interesting that Finland counts as a Scandinavian language. But most Finnish people speak also Swedish, so maybe we can get that way there. Quite interesting. We have 25% who actually does speak a Scandinavian language. Very interesting. Then to get into the topics, I have prepared a question here. Is because we're going to talk about new arts of testing methods. Gibt es Leute hier im Raum, die einen innovativen Ansatz schon bei einer Klassenarbeit umgesetzt haben? Is there someone who has used an innovative way of testing in the normal teaching? Ah, okay. I'm showing the results too shortly. Sorry about that. Oh, we have someone who speaks Portuguese as well. Oh, and here we see we have 40% of our participants who've already tried a new way of testing, which is super interesting. And for all of you, I'm very, very happy to say that we have the best possibilities also that you can tell your stories. What have you tried? What was the benefits from it? Because we really want to get into a discussion with you today. Last question. No, that was actually the last question. Perfect. Now we are ready to start with, oh, whoops. Sorry, now I'll do like this. So, well, Björn did say that he might pop out at some point. He has some challenges with the internet. So we hope he will come back soon. But welcome again, Eva, and welcome, Emma. I'm super happy to have you here today. And as I told about in the beginning, Eva, we visited your school 1.5 weeks ago in Esbjerg. And what I found super interesting was the way that you talked about your also very innovative way of teaching. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about where is Denmark standing at the moment when it comes to digital testing and how and what is actually the formats that are being used in Denmark. Can you tell a bit about that?
There are several subjects that we use digital formats on. For example, Danish, which is the mother tongue. There's a 3-part test, and they're mostly digital when we are checking spelling and stuff. It's the children log in with a uni login, their own private name and code. The same is for English written. Mathematics is also a digital exam. One of them is corrected automatically. The other one is sent to censors, and then they correct it. And then we have our sciences, where it's actually the Ministry of Education that chooses which schools are going to do biology or physics or geography. And then it's a multiple choice exam every year.
Very interesting. And they are then all online. So you sit down in front of a computer and then you get
exactly. You log on, and then you in the case of sciences, I'm the science teacher. It's just a multiple choice, and it takes about an hour, and then they're done.
Very interesting. Should I put on your presentation now?
It would be really great, because then I can.
You have like a few slides that you wanted to show us.
It's not, yeah, there. So the two obligatory are the Danish and the maths, and we don't really have any way of checking. The kids are allowed to be on the internet for some of them. For example, the obligatory science exam, they're allowed to have access to the internet, but they're only allowed to use the websites they are used to using in lessons. So over on the obligatory, I've mentioned the Danish and the maths, and then there's the ones that are chosen by the municipalities, and that's either they have to go to a written exam in English or French, where they're tested in their listening, reading, spelling, and then an open test, which is their written presentation. They can be asked to do an essay or write an article for a newspaper. That's a bit more of an open thing. And then there's the multiple choice in the sciences.
And how long have you used these digitalized testing formats in Denmark?
Well, I've been a teacher for 10 years, and the multiple choice science test has existed since I've been a teacher. The format's changed slightly. It's gone from a half-hour test to an hour test, and the areas they get tested on has changed slightly. And the Danish and maths, if I'm correct, was about 5 years ago that everything became mandatory and digital. Before that, the students were actually able to choose whether they wanted to sit and do it on paper or on computer.
Super interesting. I will stop you, or not stop you right now. I'll just go to Emma and say, because I know we have another story from you, Eva, for a bit later. And when you hear, okay, in Denmark, it has actually been going on with digitalized testing formats for maybe 10 years. How are the situation in Sweden?
It's quite similar. We have the national exams in a few subjects, and those are now mandatory to be digitalized in the written part of the exams. So the reading comprehension and the listening comprehension are still on paper. They haven't quite figured out the methods yet to do that online or digital. But apart from the national exams, we use digital exams almost every time we do exams in all the subjects, unless the practical ones, of course. So the digital part of the exams has been going on for almost like 10 years also, perhaps 8 years. And it's our normal form of testing now.
How would you, both of you, describe, if you can say just as a starter here, because we will get into discussion and more into the depth soon, but what would you say, Eva, maybe is, what are the benefits? How do you benefit from that as a teacher? And where are maybe the, Herausforderungen, where the challenges?
Yeah. I think one of the huge advantages is the amount of hours spent correcting exams. The ones that have become digital are auto-corrected, and it lightens the load for a teacher after exams or in the exam period. I think our kids are becoming more and more digitalized, so it's not foreign for them to do it in this format. I think some of the pitfalls, I'm not quite sure what the pitfalls are, to be honest. I can't really find any.
That's interesting. I think we can dive into that topic a few later. But Emma, you just nodded. How would you say the challenges and the benefits?
I think a lot of people thinks about the negative side of the possibility of cheating when it's online. But we use a system that closes the rest of the computer. So you're just allowed to log into the test and you can't reach out on the rest of the internet. So that's helping us to avoid cheating with these digital exams. And the benefits are also that a lot of students nowadays have difficulties writing in hand. A lot of diagnoses that they have makes it difficult for them to write with the hand. It takes such a long time, and with the dyslexia, for example, and the spelling and stuff. So the digital exams can help them with that. You can put on different settings that will help them with the spelling, and there are a lot of opportunities to help all kinds of students with.
So you're actually saying that the digitalized testing formats are helping children with challenges.
Oh yeah,
very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Björn, you're now listening to two colleagues here from Scandinavian countries telling about, the last 8 years, the last 10 years. And I know from Berlin, when the last year I was a principal, we were allowed to do the während, the national test in English as a test, digital. How do you see it with German classes? These the way the Scandinavian people work with digitalized testing.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions to Eva and Emma, and I try to put them in my mind. And also, you can see the bad digital infrastructure in Germany because I'm gone for a few seconds or a few minutes, I think. But to answer your questions, I think, of course, in Germany, we are behind these experiences from Scandinavia. And I think a big problem is to simply change from analog während testings to digital ones. I think it's much more potential in the digital way of think about assessments. And so my big questions would be to Eva and Emma. Was there a change about the tasks with those changing to digital stuff, or was it simply the same tasks now done digital? Because I think a huge pitfall in Germany will be not simply to change from paper to laptop, but also to change the formats of testing. So my question is, was there a change in testing formats, meaning the tasks, you know?
Emma, you've raised your hand.
No, I just have to confess, I'm quite lazy. So I'm just using my old tasks for exams and putting them on the digital exam. So for me and for my subjects, the Spanish one, it worked to just take the old ones and put them in the computer.
So not that innovative as it could have been, or maybe as it could be the target. I think, Björn, you are touching a very, very right and an important topic here. Eva?
I think in regards to a lot of the language courses, definitely for English and Danish, there hasn't been that huge of a difference. It's been the same type of topics that have been taught and just digitalized. But in maths, there's been the innovation that we have to incorporate digital programs. For example, the software we use when we're talking about trigonometry, or they have to use something called GeoGebra, where the kids can draw, and it's actually it's heightened the level of maths the kids hand in at the end. So in maths, there's been innovation. In science, there's been a huge development in regards to what we're testing. We're no longer just testing, do you know something, but where are your competencies? Yeah. And we're actually testing 4 different competencies, which is what I had in the other presentation.
We'll come to that.
We'll come back to that. But in sciences, the digitalization of testing has created a shift in what we're testing.
Yeah.
And I think, Björn, you're really touching a super interesting topic here, because what are the goals of the digitalization here? I think, Emma, you're absolutely right. One of the goals has also been from the government, maybe to save time and to make it easier. That is one goal, but it hasn't been a goal maybe to change, as you say, Björn, the philosophy in the first hand. But maybe in the second wave, things like that will happen. Ich gebe jetzt kurz einen Hinweis an alle unsere Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer. Vorher war der Chat so schön lebendig, als wir über die Sprachen, die ihr alle spricht, hier geschrieben haben. Es gibt ja wirklich die Möglichkeit, an alle 3 Gästen alle eure Fragen zu stellen. So, da ist wirklich die Bitte, nutzt den Chat, stellt alle die Fragen. Wir haben die Möglichkeit, euch auch freizuschalten, sodass ihr live mit unserer Gäste sprechen könnt. Nutzt bitte die Chance. Wann hattet ihr letztes Mal eine echte Dänin und eine echte Schwedin und eine echte Berliner im Wohnzimmer? Also nutzt bitte die Chance, das ist für alle da. Und schreib auch gerne die Fragen an Dänisch, Schwedisch oder Deutsch, dann werde ich die auch mit übersetzen. Alles in Ordnung. I just asked them, said to them that you can use ask all the questions that you want. And maybe there is one question that comes in right away. Which programs do you use for the testing? Emma and Eva. Emma, you said something about that you use some state tests, and you have some self-made tests. Can you say a little bit about that, Emma?
Yeah, well, we use a program that we bought. We're a free school, and our boss, the company that owns us, has bought in this service. So it's called Inspera. Sorry, Infomenta was my child's school. Inspera is the name of the service, and they provide a program where we can create our own tests. We can use tests from other teachers. It's like a community. They have finished models that you can just pick and put in your own questions. You can have multiple choices questions. You can have essay questions. It's also programmed for math tasks. I'm not even close to a math teacher, so I haven't looked into that. But they've thought about all these different subjects and the difficulties that it has. You name the GeoBra thing. Yeah. and they have like the drawings and everything in the program, so it's also adapted for math teachers. So these programs helps us. We don't have to innovate anything ourselves.
Maybe you can put in the name in the chat, maybe, Emma.
Yeah, of course.
How is it in Denmark, Eva?
Well, our which is 9th grade exams, when they finish school, is done by the state. The Ministry of Education is the one that has created the exams and makes them available to us. But we have different websites, Gyldendal, where they have the same format of tests, and they look exactly like the official ones, where we use them for training and testing up to the exams. And otherwise, we have a lot of digital solutions. We've got a lot of companies that create teaching materials and tests during school years.
Before we go to the next two questions, Eva, I would like to, because we are not only going to talk about digitalized testing today, we're also going to talk about what we in German call Zeitgemäße Prüfungskultur. And what Björn actually tried to ask about is innovative arts of testing. And I know, Eva, that you at your school has invented or implemented another way of doing the science test, where you're not testing one student alone, so to say, but you're testing in groups. Would you tell us a little bit about that innovative way of testing?
About 5 years ago, it was actually the Danish government decided that we didn't want to just see what the children knew, but we wanted to see, were they able to make experiments, to research, to find models and explain stuff from models. So they decided to make our science exams group exams. So it's groups of 2 or 3 students, and we have 3 groups in. So a maximum of 9 students or 6, I can't remember, students in the room at the same time, and they're in for 2 hours. And I'm in the example. I don't know if you can put that up.
Yes,
Jacob?
Of course I can now. I already put it there. Yes.
I've taken an example from one of my students where the topic they chose was clean drinking water. They had to write a problem, which they did here, which threats are there against our drinking water and consequences. And then they have to research and make a project about it. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the models they've used, and they did different experiments. And what we use to help them, we use a model to facilitate their learning, which is called the CRAFT model, which stands for Creating Really Advanced Future Thinkers. So in the purple, you start with a real problem. Theirs was drinking water. They had to research, and it was very important for us, and it is very important for us, that research isn't just Google. Researchers go to the local water plant, talk to them about how they treat our drinking water, talk to experts. They have to create models that they use to explain, for example, the water cycle they had earlier. They have to do prototypes, which can be different forms of experiments. How do we clean water? They make filters with active carbon and stuff. And then the last one, which is the blue, is the pitch, is their actual exam, where they come in and they tell us, what did I learn during this project? So it's not just the knowledge, but it's also how do you talk to a scientist? How do you create experiments? If the experiment didn't work, why didn't it work? What do you have to innovate to get it to work? So our entire science curriculum actually changed 5 years ago, because it was no longer about finding the answer, it was finding the methods.
Thank you. Oh, this was the last one. I thought
that was it.
One. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is super interesting because this is beyond actually what you were talking about. How are the formats changed? Have you?
Can I ask just to understand a little bit more? For Eva, you talked about a group testing, and that they are for 2 hours in a room together.
Yeah,
and what do they do there?
We have usually 3 groups, about 3 groups or 2 groups. I think it's a maximum of 9 students. And they start by coming in, usually it's the physics lab. They tell us what their problem was and what their plan for today is. We're going to be talking about this. We're going to be showing you these experiments. And to explain things, we're using these models. And then they start making the experiments. They set it up. They find their models. Then we go to the next group. And whilst we're talking to the next group, they're checking their results and doing their experiments and stuff. And then we go back and forth, and we look at their laboratory technique. We look at their, have they remembered to put their goggles on in the physics lab? So everything it's a very whole-rounded evaluation of a student, and not just what do they know.
So there's no summative testing at the end. It's more process-orientated?
It's a lot more process-orientated, but during the process, as they have to use their, Jakob, you have to help me here, fagbegreber.
They have to use their
the proper vocabulary.
Oh, the proper vocabulary from the topic, or from the topic, yes.
Yeah. So they're tested on their knowledge, but during the process.
All right. So they get grades for all their competencies.
We have a piece of paper where they get checked on their communication, their modeling competencies, their research competencies, and their perspektivering.
How do you use the knowledge in other
situations?
Areas.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you assess also how they work together?
Not on the day.
Okay.
We're not allowed to look at previous work. We're only allowed to see what we see that day.
Okay. Thank you.
Emma, how is it in Sweden? Because I actually remember, I am from Denmark. When I had my exam in the 9th grade, that was 1995. We were the first group that did the first year that did the group exam in mathematics many years ago. Do you have group exams also in Sweden?
Yes, the national tests have group exams in the oral part of the tests. So then in math, in English, in Swedish, they use groups to test it. And since I'm a teacher in language, we also, of course, use groups. Not when they work together to create some text or something, but in the vocabulary, in the oral exams, of course, we use groups. And I also, Eva, you told me that you see the whole process when you put a final grade, and that's exactly how we think it also here in Sweden. It's not just the tests that decide the grade of the student; it's the process to come to the final, to see what they have with them at the final of the semester. So everything is counted.
And the thing is, as even the digital tests for biology and geography and stuff, they've also been changed. I think it's about 3 years ago. Now there's also focus on the competencies. The test is actually divided into sections that have to do with research or communication or modeling. So it's not just knowledge, but it's knowledge on certain areas that have changed.
I think even in math here in Sweden, it's not just about getting the right result to a task; it's how you got there.
Exactly.
And that's also evaluated.
But I think that is the same actually everywhere. You look at the way to get to the result. But there is a quite interesting question in the chat that is actually fitting very well what we're talking about at the moment. Micah is asking, do you have any assessment, evaluation, or protocol in or comparing different exams? What about tech competences? Are the exams structured due to the competences, or are you analyzing on your own which competences you need to focus on with each student? Is it the same competences for every student, or do you also individualize there?
It depends. If you know your students, you know where they are, in what level they are, and some students can't perform on a certain level because it's too far away from where they are. So then you won't get anything from them. So of course we can put it in individual levels. But normally it's a standard test, and we look for the same competences in everyone, but in different levels, of course.
I think one of the advantages with looking at the competency areas is that you will always have students that are, some are orally strong, some are really good at the experiments, some are really good at doing the models, explaining the models. So it gives the students with the different strengths possibilities to be seen and heard, and still get good grades.
Interesting. There's also another question here, which I find quite interesting. Maybe that fits as well here, but because one problem, it says here, Melanie asks, one problem people often see is that digital tools and also creative testing, as we just talked about, will lower the level of these tests. I don't believe that, but what can I say to these negative people is the question.
Just a spontaneous thought is that the digital world is the world of the students. They were born into it, at least here in Sweden, and they often know more about it than us teachers. I wasn't born with a cell phone in my hand, but they are. So they know a whole lot about it, and we're just entering their world. So I don't think it's an obstacle for them to do the tests or do digital formats in class. It's their world. They're already in it. So we're just adapting to their world in a way.
I don't think it's been my experience that the level of material that the children are tested on is lowered. On the contrary, I actually find the tests we do today to be more difficult than 5 or 10 years ago. The level expectancy of what they're supposed to be able to do curriculum based is actually higher now than it was 5-10 years ago.
Björn, what would you say to that? Can you?
Yeah, I would say something to that what Emma said, because yesterday I was in Western Germany at a school, and we did a project, you can say, where we did the same thing with students and teachers. They created questions and assessments in a digital tool, and the students, 6th grade, were much more able to do really hard questions and really hard assessments, and they were much more able to fit into those systems than the teachers. The teachers had much more time to understand what was happening there, and they did lower questions, and so I think that the 6th graders were much more able to perform in this digital environment, and so I think it has not to do with a lower level. I think it's a huge can you say Vorurteil. I have a Danish name, a Swedish name, but I cannot speak in Swedish. I'm sorry.
It's a prejudice.
Prejudice. Yeah. I think it's a big prejudice that digital things or creative, as you say, Zeitgemäße, as we say in German, things lower the level. I think it can be the other way around. In my experience, the students are exploding with things if they are allowed to do digital things. So I think it's a prejudice.
Absolutely agree with you.
One question that fits very well here is from Simon. Do you have a base set of competences that you help the students to achieve? I tried to translate it in my world. That means are you following the curricula? Is the curricula also competence based, Emma and Eva, or do you develop the competence set yourselves?
In Denmark, it's definitely something that's been in progress. Because they implemented the science exam 5 years ago, and they hadn't updated our mål
curriculum.
The curriculum. But every year when we get the new curriculum, it's more and more adjusted to fit what we're looking for and what the kids have to be able to do to live in the 21st century.
Emma, is that the same in Sweden?
Yeah, the curricula has changed over the years. Now it's not focused on knowledge, it's focused on competences, because the knowledge is right there for them. They have their cell phone, they have their computer, their iPad, so they can reach knowledge anytime. And we have to teach them what to do with the knowledge and how to analyze and how to compare and how to discuss it. So yes, the curriculum is definitely more focused on competences now.
Yeah.
I read a very interesting questions. Frauke, I'm trying to put you through to us. I hope it's okay. You have to accept that you will be able to speak to us if you want to, at least, because I find it quite interesting what you wrote in the chat. Because in Germany we actually have this fünftes Prüfungselement in the high schools. That means the fifth test. Frauke, there you are, perfect. Then you can maybe ask a question yourself, because I find it super interesting that you just make this parallel to the German system.
Okay, I try in English. We have okay. We have this classical exams in the high school exams, which consist of the classical formats, and then we have this fifth element. And this is, for me, it reminded me quite much on that what Eva just showed us with this. What you have the craft thing, the circle. So I think we actually have that, and it's even in the highest exams included. But I see that we don't use it so much, and that we don't use yet the digital opportunities in this. And we would have like to get more of that, or like work together how we can even, like you said, that you give degrees on the different phases of the work. So how do you do that? What kind of indicators do you use? That's always what we have very much to discuss in the teacher group.
Thank you, Frauke. Eva, can you answer the question? How did you implement it? Because I know what you told when we were visiting your school is that you don't just use this art of work or testing.
It's not just in science.
Exactly. Maybe about that.
I think it was back in 2018 or 19, I'm not quite sure, is when we implemented craft. And to start off with, we actually had a subject in our timetable called craft, where the children had to work with the different elements of craft. And it could be small projects, it could be big projects. It was very different. And the idea was to try and get this method of working in every single subject. So we used it in Danish. I have to write a book report. How can I present it? Does it have to be written? Can I sing a song about a book report? Can I make a poster about it? How can I present a book report that isn't an assignment? So we actually tried craft in all the subjects. And in a lot of subjects, it's something that's used daily, all the way from grade 0 to grade 9.
Björn, also you've been teaching in a high school here in Germany, and we have in the 10th grade the MSA-Prüfung, it's at least here in Berlin, where they have to do another kind of testing, so to say. We have the fünftes Prüfungskomponent in year 12 or 13. How do you see the situation here in Germany? How can we be better at using it all the way through, so that we will use that as normal tests as well? Do you see a possibility there?
Yeah, it's I see what Frauke said. It's we have 16 different states and 16 different rules about this fifth component, as it's called in Germany, and it's facultative. It's not obligatory for German students, and so this instrument is normally used from students who try to better their final grade in doing a lot of stuff at the end of the school year. And I think that's not a good way to implement those techniques. So you really have to implement it in a obligatory way for all students. And I think we have to free ourselves from the culture of testing, from those grade 10 testings that you mentioned, Jakob, because I think those summative testings at the end of year 10, they are really the bad way of testing students, because they in grade 10 in Germany, often whole classes are only learning to the test, trying to fit those tests at best grades, and forget everything about this after the test, and are only tested huge amounts of knowledge and not so much competencies. And I think the process-oriented evaluation or grading or assessment, as Eva mentioned, I think this is the best way to perform and to modernize the culture of assessments. And I think the one thing is how you can fit the structure of things, and the second thing is the culture, how you fill it with life. And there, I think, is especially with the fifth component, there are very different approaches in Germany.
I think it's quite interesting. Also, we've been talking now about, on one hand side, the digital testing formats. We've talked about other innovative, maybe formative testing formats, and also when we talked about the digitalized testing, there were also this component about helping the teachers to don't use that much time on correcting. And Micah has a question here, which is quite interesting as well, because I think it goes in the same end. Because when we talk about digital testing formats, then we also say that it can help us maybe achieve more information about the student. And she's asking here, are you comparing the achieved competences during a school year? For example, is the testing program giving you a graphic or a diagram or maybe another feedback where you can see the performance over years from the students? And according to that, how do you use these results? Do you talk with the students? Do you talk about further steps? Do you feed forward, feedback, or are you testing in certain circles? Can you say, Emma, maybe you, because you have this testing program that you talked about, is that helping you as a teacher in other ways of saying good, bad, or medium?
Yeah, it could, but we have a different platform for the feedback to the students, and that is called SchoolSoft. So that's a platform that reaches the parents and the students, and we give the feedback and we give the grades directly in that program. So to not do double work, we do the evaluations and the feedback and the gradings in the SchoolSoft program. And that program can absolutely give us statistics of how the students are doing in different materials and over the years. And so that really helps us. And we use that material to twice a semester do a general evaluation of our students in all the subjects and all over the school. So,
but more than just the numbers, how many percent are they having right or wrong? Because that is actually going against what Björn is actually trying to say. We need another type of testing.
Yeah, those are not the results of the exams, not with the grading, not with points. We're not interested in the points. We're interested in the evaluations of the competences. So that's what we're evaluating, how they are doing in the competences in each subject, and we get the numbers of that, and we can evaluate, okay, the reading competences, for example, are low in this certain grade, in the 8th grade, for example. So then we evaluate how can we work with this reading competence in this age, and what are we doing wrong, and what can we do different?
Eva, how is that with you?
I know that there's a kind of collective from the Ministry of Education where they're trying to implement these national tests, which actually do have the ability to show us progress from year to year, but they're just not created right as of yet. There's a lot of misinformation in them that we can't use as of yet. So the idea is in working, but we don't have a system where we can follow the student from 0 to 9. When I get them in 7th grade, if I'm lucky enough to follow them 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, we have our own intern way of checking, is there a progress? But there's nothing nationally as that I know of yet.
Jan, you wanted to say exactly.
I have a lot of. I'm like you. I have a lot of questions. If it's okay, to Eva and Emma, would you say, because you have such a long experience with digital teaching and digital assessments, would you say that the relationship from teachers to students have changed with digital ways of teaching and assessing, or has it nothing to do with it?
I don't think it has much to do with it. It's just a tool to show your competence and your knowledge. We still do the same kind of teaching, but we have other tools to do it. And I think with these other opportunities, it's possible to reach more students than we could before, because it's possible to give them more opportunity, more ways to show and more ways to learn. So for me, it's been positive, and I think my relationship with the students hasn't changed unless it's for the good. So nothing negative about the digitalization in the relationship.
I think it mirrors the world that they'll be walking into as adults. Like Emma mentioned before, our dyslexic children, I think that it's made a huge progress there, that I don't have to say, here's 28 pages, read. I can go, here's 28 pages, listen to it, or read it with your ears. And it's not just the dyslexic kids. I have a lot of students who are slow readers, but when they get to listen to it, they learn a lot faster. So I think it's had a huge impact in the positive. And the fact that there's so much information out there that I have access to when we do it digitally, rather than here's my 7th grade book and that's what we have to use. It opens the world up a lot more, for me at least.
Björn, yes, please.
I have short thing maybe. In my experience, I thought that my students also have sometimes relationships to their devices. So that brings me to bring your own device, because I saw that some students are really motivated when they can learn and work and also being assessed with their own devices. What's your experience with that?
In our school, kids actually get a laptop from the school. From I think it's 3rd grade we're down to now. So from 3rd grade till 9th grade, the school gives them a laptop which they can use. We've actually had a lot of challenges in regards to mobile phones. We're a mobile-free school. They don't have their mobiles on them from 8 in the morning till they go home. But that's because it's a distraction. But we can use mobiles also as testing tools. It depends on the teacher. But I think the kids are, as you said, a lot more motivated when they're not limited to here's a book. That's what you have to use.
Yeah.
But also a question that goes quite well to that, because Björn, you were asking if they're more motivated when testing on the own device. There was a question before in the chat that we haven't asked yet. Do you always, when you use these digitalized tests, are they only tested in class, or do you also do remote testing? That means, are they also allowed to be at some point maybe at home or somewhere else? Because it goes a little bit in the same way as your question, Björn. How is that with you, Emma?
That's hard. We tried it now with the pandemic, with COVID. We had to do it because we had to send the students home. But we don't have the control. We have the control over the computer, that they can't access any other websites, but we don't have control over the cell phones or the iPads or the parents in the background. So there are a lot of other aspects to that. So we're not doing remote testing if we don't have to.
What about you, Emma?
Yeah, official testing we don't do. We do that on premises, but a lot of assignments, all of my assignments, I give them as homework are digital. And sometimes people go, but aren't you afraid that they're going to ask their mum or their neighbor or whoever? But I actually find that their results for their homework assignments are very equal to their test assignments. I don't find that the children are motivated to cheat. I find that they're actually motivated to find out what can I do? What can I prestere?
And then we're back to the competences and not the knowledge. They can
Exactly.
search the knowledge, that's okay, but they can't cheat on the competences. So
exactly,
because Gabriela was asking the question here: is cheating not really not a problem? The students could use a second device to search the internet. But your answer would be, Emma, that we don't test the knowledge, so we test the competences.
Yeah. Yes, if you do a test that they can cheat on, then you haven't done a test that corresponds with the curriculum. Because we can't grade knowledge, we have to grade competences. So it's more difficult for them to cheat. But of course, they can write down the formulas in math, and they can write down some years in history. But it's not our biggest problem. No.
I'm also always telling the story from Denmark as well. I mean, because when you have the oral exam in Danish, for instance, you have 24 hours to make a presentation. You draw a topic and you go home, and of course you can use the internet. Also, you can also use expert. You can call your parents or grandparents or some uncle who's very good at literature. But when they come to the exam, they have to tell what they have researched and to do the reflection on this, what they have learned. And I think that is the thing. So I don't think that the internet is the problem, but the testing format is the internet. If you change the testing format to something where you're actually allowed to use internet or search engines or experts, then it's still back to the students to show what they have learned. How do you see that, Björn?
I totally agree. And there are some people in our institute, Henrik, for example, at his school, the students are not allowed. They are forced to use everything. And the students said, please don't let us ask our parents, because that would be too much. I don't want to have my exam written by my father. But they are really forced to use everything. And the formats, what they are asked, put the limits on top of that. So they have to use the internet, everything. They have to use also peer reviews and things, and they write their exams on top of that to prove that they can use the materials and show their competencies in a new task that they are done. And I think that's the right way. If there is an exam where you can cheat, then there's maybe something wrong with the exam, not with the student.
And Emma, how do you see that with language? Because I used to be a language teacher as well, and you're teaching languages as well. I think it's quite interesting because what you just said, Björn, that you force them to do it. I used to do assignments for the kids that they had to use their language. I forced them to call up someone and speak German with them on the phone. or now with the digitalized tools, it's much easier to actually make real situations where you have to use language. Is that something that you use?
Not as much as I could and as I should, but we tried it, and the world is open. It's just one click away with the computer, and we also have one computer for each student. So it's a really big possibility to do that. Yeah, but we don't do it enough.
Then maybe we could give you some tips as well, also some motivation to keep on with that one. Eva, you were nodding as well, as I said, my idea.
That's because I'm one of those teachers that say yes to everything, which is why I'm here today. I have a lot of international projects. I have one right now with France and Holland. So even though I'm a science teacher, I force my kids to contact people outside the country and experts. And if they're doing a project about water, I put them on the bike and I say, go visit Karsten at the water plant. You know, I send them out of the classroom because that's where they learn. And, you know, who in the world doesn't have access to the internet? We all do. It's more correct. Let them use everything they need.
But is that also something that you at the end then would grade?
You mean in the exams or?
Yeah.
Well, as it is right now, we're not allowed to take their work process during the weeks up to the exam into account. But when we're doing their end of year grade, I take it into account. So they actually end up with 2 grades. One is their year, end of year, and then there's the exam grade. And then their amount of work and their amount of real life experience it plays in.
It's quite interesting because I was talking to a Norwegian teacher who couldn't make it today because that was a plan, not instead of you, Björn, but on the side of you, that we would have a Norwegian teacher as well. And she told me a very interesting story that the Norwegian exam for written Norwegian has changed. That they don't do that as a test where they sit down and write this essay or task that they have to do, but as a process writing, that the teacher gets it back 3 times, and that it's the 4th time that it's handed in, that's actually then the final version, which I found super interesting because that is actually how we all work as adults, that we take it back and forth. And they have really implemented in Norway as the state official test is a processive writing, which I found super interesting. So I'm asked now that there are only 5 minutes left. So I would see if there may become a last question into the chat now, but then I would also say, Eva and Emma, if you, as Björn said before, you are experienced with the digital testing, you are, at least Eva, at your school, you have implemented this kind of design thinking process to work with innovation testing as well. What tips would you give German teachers who are listening to us now if they want to start it slowly? What should they just do, and where should they be careful?
I think one of the biggest things that I've taken with me on my journey as a teacher is just do it. The worst that can happen is it fails, and then you've learned something. If you don't try, you'll never succeed. There's a lot of stuff I've tried with my students, programming and stuff. I don't know how to program. I figure it out as we go. Learn with your students. Don't be afraid, because it'll hold you back.
And learn from your students. Sorry. You learn with your students and learn from your students, because they often know a lot of things that we haven't even got close to yet. So get some help from them.
But if you then have a principal like Björn or like me, and they're saying, "What are you?" But there's a curriculum you have to do like this. How have you challenged these hindernisse, these stones that were lying in the way? Because if you are a little bit, if you're not as have so much courage as the two of you have, how would you face a challenge in that way?
Start small and start slow. Don't do the whole semester as a digital project, because then you have to rely on that project. Just do small things. It could be 5-minute things. It could be just doing a Kahoot, that's like a questionnaire online with the students, and find the joy in it. Don't rely on the projects right away for gradings, because then you're on deep water. And so just play with it. And there are so much forums and communities where you can get tips.
Ask for help.
Yeah.
Björn, how would you round it up and say, what would be your tips and tricks to the colleagues out here today?
It's already said. Just try to involve your students as experts. Ask them for formats, for assessments. They are so creative, and try to make them your expert buddies.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for joining in today. And before we close it all up, I will just say here that we have, of course, from Forum, the next events. Jetzt könnte ich ja wieder zurück ins Deutsch wechseln, ein paar Ankündigungen hier, weil nächste Woche am 6.10. Mittwoch haben wir im Netzwerkbildung digital das Digitalforum Qualifizierungsangebote in der Digitalität. Da werden wir ab 13:30 Uhr mit ExpertInnen über die ganze Bildungskette hinaus darüber reden, wie Digitalisierungsformate und Angebote aussehen können. Also sehr spannend. Und am 14.10. geht es zurück in den Community Calls hier, wo es geht um Schulentwicklung. Wie kommt Innovation in das System Schule? Das ist ja ein sehr spannendes Thema jetzt gerade, wenn wir hier Post-Election ja immer noch gucken müssen, wie wird das ganze Thema Bildung weitergemacht. Doreen, meine Kollegin, die uns hier den ganzen Tag auch begleitet hat, ist im Chat und hat gerade geschrieben, dass die Veranstaltung seht ihr auf unserer Webseite. Nochmal hier die Ankündigung, wenn ihr mit uns um die Welt reisen möchtet, kommt das Fachmagazin Plan BD am 7.10. auf der Straße. Auf der Webseite gibt es Informationen, auch Kontaktdaten zu den Schulen, die wir in Dänemark besucht hatten, wo unter anderem Eva unterrichtet. Das war auch an die Kollegin, die hier im Chat war, gefragt hat, ob Erasmus-Kontakte möglich war. Da kann man auch, glaube ich, über die Seite auch gut reinschauen. Und Björn, das Institut für Prüfungskultur unterstützt ja auch in diesem Bereich. Also folgt auch gerne Björn und das Institut in alle gewandte Kanälen. Wir vom Forum freuen uns, wenn ihr wieder in 14 Tage dabei seid. Wir freuen uns auch, wenn ihr am Konferenz am 10., 11. und 12. November Lust habt, dabei zu sein. Und ich würde mich freuen, wenn wir uns auch wiedersehen, und wünsche, die Kontaktdaten können wir sicher bilateral gerne Kontakt stellen. Also meldet euch gerne bei mir oder meiner Kollegin Doreen, dann schaffen wir das auch. Und sonst, Björn, Eva, Emma, thank you very much for the visit today. It has been a great pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And it was really interesting to get to know you and your work. So thank you so much. Und für alle anderen wünsche ich einen wunderschönen Nachmittag. Also, mach's gut.
Danke, ciao.
Danke euch. Und jetzt dürft ihr einfach, now you're allowed to go out, but please don't push the button up there. I'll do that later. Eva and Emma and Björn, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.